One of the bigger releases of this past month is a game called Stray Gods. For those of you who don't know, it's developed by an indie studio called Summerfall Studios. They're based over in Melbourne, Australia. And it's a rather interesting idea. It combines the visual novel with a choice-based musical to create something that we've never seen before. You're allowed to choose between different traits that your character can use during songs, which are basically like fights almost, and that changes the lyrics of the song. They even have 4 soundtracks that were released. I haven't gone and listened to them because I prefer just to hear them in the game itself. But thanks to the publisher of the game, Plan of Attack Agencies, they published the game in Europe, I have been able to play it. So thank you very, very much to them. It is much appreciated. They did provide me with a review copy of the game. First, I think it would be a good idea to talk about some of the accessibility features that this game offers. Now, Summerfall created a fantastic page dedicated to accessibility, and on that page, you will see a heading that discusses blind players specifically. The first thing to note is that this game does not contain a screen reader, at least not at the time of recording. We have asked Summerfall if they plan to introduce one, and they've said that they'll see what resources are available to them. They did write a quick start guide, which is a menu guide that you can use to get things set up, but it does include audio description as well as sound effects for the UI and the ability to disable timed choices. When I first played, it turned audio description on, turned sound effects for the UI on as well, and then turned off timed choices. This game apparently works quite well with OCR. I did not test this for 2 reasons. A, I did not have a keyboard on hand that had a numpad, which would make object navigation within the OCR window difficult. And B, I wanted to test how the game would work without OCR, sort of to simulate the experience of what you would get if you were playing on console without a PC connected. So I booted up the game. I knew there was not going to be a screen reader. I had the menu guide in front of me, and the first thing I needed to do was to enable audio description and turn off timed choices. Luckily, the embargo had lifted by the time I received my copy, so I was able to get sighted assistance. But the way that the options menu is laid out is a little confusing, especially when you're trying to read it with OCR, because you have tabs for different categories of the options, and then you also have the options themselves. And I tend to notice that navigation in this particular menu can get quite difficult without any form of speech feedback. So with some help, I eventually did get these options configured, and I started a new game. And the first thing that I noticed, and please, I'm not trying to nitpick here. I know many people will consider this to be, nitpicking, but I really wasn't a fan of the voice they used for the AD. Look, it's 2023, and the voice they used was, I do believe, one of the voices from the early 2000s. I can tell you it was definitely not a neural voice. They also, when they were mixing the AD, and in fact when they were mixing all the sounds together, they tended to not do the best job. There was a scene in the game where a conversation was happening between 2 characters, and they paused the scene halfway through one of the words that was being said, played the audio description, and resumed the scene and let the other half of the word finish. The game does feature the ability to skip lines of dialogue, similar to what Brock the Investigator had. So I was hoping they would do it in a similar way, where they'll pause a line of dialogue, let the audio description speak, then continue with the dialogue. But I mean, for their first effort, I do have to say well done, and I am incredibly grateful that we had the audio description in the game in the first place. I did turn it off after a while because I felt that it wasn't as necessary, and also I felt that it was detracting more from the experience than adding, but I really do hope in the next game to see this improve. Sadly though, I was not able to complete the game due to one glaring issue, and that would be the map screen. During certain parts of the game, you will get the ability to go to different places and talk to various characters. Now, this game has no failed state, so you don't have to worry about getting stuck. The only problem was that this map is incredibly difficult to navigate. It is a standard menu, but when viewing it with OCR, you can get an idea of how the screen is laid out, but then if you try to stick to that layout, you oftentimes will be taken to the incorrect place. My issue came when, at a certain point in the game, I'd spoken to almost all the characters I needed to speak to, and the one that I needed to speak to in order to continue the story was still there. But there was also 1 or 2 characters that were on that screen that had no more dialogue to offer me. And so every time I would try and look for this one character to speak to, I would always get put on the character that had no dialogue. I really, really do hope they find a way to fix this map. It is a pretty important part of the game, so even just removing characters who you've already spoken to and who have nothing to say. This also brings me to my next point, which is the dialogue of the characters. Now, the voice acting is fantastic. Okay, there's a lot of really famous people that were cast for this game. A lot of them from The Last of Us. I'm not entirely sure why, but hey, I mean, they're great voice actors. But the audio mixing is terrible. Required me to even turn my volume down. That really did put me off. The music I quite enjoyed, but I do have to bring attention to this next point. Now, I'm not hating on anyone's skill. I'm not hating on anyone's talent. These particular actors who were cast are more voice actors than singers. And I don't say that because they're bad singers. They're not bad singers by any stretch of the word. They're good singers. But in a game that touts itself as a musical, I think they could have done better. In fact, I do have to say that I noticed that they cast a lot of people from The Last of Us, and I'm not sure why. Again, these actors are fantastic. They're talented. They're fantastic actors. They really know what they're doing. But I would have rather gone with a few different choices. It's a great story, a very good story, in fact, if you're prepared to suspend your belief of reality for a second and get sucked in. Most of the time, you'll be going around talking to various characters and inspecting various locations, although occasionally you will get the opportunity to participate in a song battle with one or more characters. Now, this is where the game shines, because during these songs, you will get the opportunity to pick from 3 traits. Charming, which is on the left, kick-ass, which is in the middle, and clever, which is on the right. Depending on which trait you pick, the lyrics of the song will change, and this is where the game really shines. There are 1 or 2 little surprises that you're going to have to deal with. Mainly, when it comes time to make a choice, there is no sound to indicate this. You've got to wait until the track begins to fade out, and it does this rather nicely. It's not an abrupt stop, like what some people would expect. The instruments go quiet, and if you time it well enough, you can actually have the song continue seamlessly. Dialogue options don't seem to make that much of an impact, so all of your important choices are left in the music. This is better in terms of accessibility because the dialogue options seem to be randomized. They also work on a system of having each dialogue option assigned to an arrow key. So you'll press an arrow key to locate the dialogue option, and then you press Enter or A to select. Now for the all-important question, is this game worth it? Should you pick it up? I'm going to say yes, but I'm also going to say wait until the game goes on sale. It's a great game. You can really see all the love they've put into it. It does have a few rough edges. Yes, the audio mixing is terrible. Yes, the story does sometimes drag. Yes, it can be a bit difficult to navigate the menus, but this is a labor of love, and for a game that has been developed by an indie studio, in fact, for their first game, this is great. I'll definitely be trying to play through this one again. I'm going to restart, in fact, because I want to make some different choices. But I definitely think this game is worth a play. It's a great way to spend a rainy afternoon, and I'll definitely be keeping an eye on this one.